Most of the new plantings are on trellis on wires. Can you talk a little bit about the advantages of one versus the other?
Well, if you look at old vine in general, you'll notice that the vast majority of old vines are Zinfandel. There's some wonderful Sansot and Carignan and other varieties, but the majority of it is Zinfandel. And Zinfandel is a thin-skinned variety that is not the easiest one to grow, and due to its nature of being thin-skinned and the cluster being very tight, it could be very prone to rot if you get a little bit of rain or too much moisture. And so to hang the fruit separate from each other, to really hang it in an architecture where the clusters aren't touching, is beneficial to Zinfandel. And a head-trained vine certainly lends itself to that. The younger vines then go on wire simply because it affords growers more versatility with how they farm their vineyard. Old head-trained Zinfandels are very labor-intensive.
It's all manual. Has to be all manual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, and that leads to the opportunities for growers to make the best decisions possible with new varieties being planted. And the Zinfandels are an example as well, but of how they want to implement best management practices for the ultimate wine quality. So those old head-trained vines still produce these beautifully intense wines, but also, like we were saying, it's much more labor-intensive. The trellis vines allow flexibility.
I have to say they're also much more attractive.
Well,
there's something romantically beautiful about those ugly old vines.
Right. And you know, those gnarly old vine Zinfandels are something that aren't seen in a lot of parts of wine country, at least here in the California context. I mean, they're these really artistic, kind of gnarly, twisting looking vines, and they're pretty spectacular to see. They're beautiful, just examples of history and heritage.
And they require a lot of maintenance. So you can go to different areas of California like Cucamonga, where there may be a couple thousand acres left, or other parts of Oakley where perhaps a grower for 10 or 15 years just didn't bring a good pruning crew in, and those vines have completely lost their shape, and they've become these little stumps with fruit hanging on the ground. So when you look at old vines in Lodi, and you think of how many thousands of acres of old vines there are, and how well trained they are, and you think of the generations of decisions that have had to be made just to maintain that over 3 or 4 generations, to maintain those shapes of those vines, it's pretty spectacular.
And some of them are absolutely gorgeous, and it's a very interesting observation because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, some of that fruit was by going to white zin, a blended white zin for some of the big brands, and yet the farmers could not help but go out there and do all the hard work, no matter where it ended up. It's that Lodi pride again. Yeah. It's a very interesting observation that didn't occur to me, that for generations they've been out there toiling away to get those beautiful vines today.
A neighbor of mine who just recently passed away, he was an older gentleman, and he maintained his 3-acre old vine Zinfandels, one of the most beautifully pruned Zinfandels in Lodi, and I am really fortunate to be able to assist his brother in managing it now. And to me, I consider it just a gift and honor to be able to be in that vineyard and help out, because if I make a wrong pruning decision, I could potentially affect years and years of work. Well, he would always talk to me, this gentleman, he would always talk to me about how important it was for him to walk that sandy, lone vineyard with his father. And after his father was gone, he would imagine his father's footsteps impressed into the sandy soils. And it was just, you sense that kind of emotional tie that goes to being the steward of what was given to you by the prior generation. And that ties into sustainability, the entire concept of stewardship. So,
before we move on to the red wines, we have a question from the audience. Kerner, never heard of it. What is it? Do you want to handle that?
That's a tough one. Perhaps you might have a little more.
It is a German grape variety that is indigenous to Germany itself.
It's a cross.
It's a cross, but it's mostly planted and known as a German variety. But it is this really interesting grape that has this minerality quality to it that it's expressed quite well in this wine, and you don't find it often here in the United States. And so that's pretty special to be able to have that here.
Yeah, there's quite a few interesting German crosses that have come over the Atlantic and have been very hard to get the budwood, very hard to get the budwood here, and somehow in Mr. Coke seemed to find a way to get a lot
He
of
knows how to get the budwood.
He does.
He knows how to get the budwood. So we have two questions about water. What is the water availability situation like in Lodi, and does Lodi get its irrigation water from the Delta?
That is a
Big question.
very good question, and if I may, it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
one of the very fortunate things that we have in Lodi that I think many areas in California don't have is that we sit next to one of the greatest sources of water that there can be, which is the Great Sierra Nevada. And so consequently, not only do we have surface water that comes down our rivers, but we also have subsurface water that can be mined in the form of wells. And so the other thing is that we have very short rivers that go right into the delta. It's not as if you were further south in the valley or further north, where these rivers have a very, very long way to go out of the only little gap in the mountains that Cameron was referring to earlier, which is the Carquinez Strait, which is the same strait that allows the winds to come in. We're right across from the strait, and so we're wedged between this huge water source to the east and the California Delta to the west. So consequently, what we've seen here in Lodi is speculation from other growers in other parts of California that see that we have great water, and we will always have great water, and I say that very confidently. So we're very fortunate. I remember in the North Coast when we were farming there, we would, if we got a 20 gallon per minute well, we'd be jumping for joy. And here it's very easy to do tenfold that to get a good well. Now, we're also very judicious in the water use. We don't need all that water. We're not trying to put a lot of water on. But we fortunately are in a position where you don't have to necessarily worry about the drought, although we are very conscientious about our water use.
And just on that point, I've seen a lot of the irrigation is subsurface irrigation here.
It is, yes. There's a lot of
surprised at
subsurface
how much
irrigation.
there was.
Yes, exactly. In fact, the vineyard behind my house is subsurface to conserve on water. Also, to be able to get the concentrations we get in our wines, we are very conserving of water. But we do have plentiful water. We don't really get it from the delta. There are quite a lot of grape growing regions that can pull from the delta. I would say the vast majority of our water is either McCollum River water, which is the main river that goes through Lodi, and then people take it into a district, a water district, or groundwater.
Right, right. And we're fortunate too that in certain parts of the region that the water table is much less or much more shallow than in other areas of the state. I mean, in some places they're having to dig quite deep to tap into the aquifer to provide water for their wine growing and for other agriculture.
And here on the west side of the appellation,
right,
the vines can access it almost, right? And the aquifer is so shallow that it's easy to dry farm. You don't have to worry that it might be too much water.
Well, if you look at Lodi as a cross section west to east, it starts really in the peaty soils of the delta where you're underwater. And the reason that you're underwater is that levees are keeping the water out. It's almost like a little Holland. And then as you work your way to the east, you climb above the sea level, and you get to Lodi, which is perhaps around 50 feet above sea level. And then you get into the rolling hills to the east, and you get up to about 400 feet above sea level. And so the vineyards that are closest to the delta, certainly their roots can be tapping directly in, and you can dry farm them. The further east you go, the more challenging it is to dry farm, but it certainly can be done as some of the vineyards you've seen today. So
Let's jump into your wine because we're eating up the time here. So Tempranillo.
This is Tempranillo, and comes from two different vineyard sources. One is the Liberty Oaks vineyard located in the northern part of the AVA. In fact, in a sub-AVA known as Jayhant. And then the other portion of it, and it's almost 50-50, comes from the Las Cerezas vineyard, which is located in Victor, and it's on the classic Tokay sandy loams, the soils that defined Lodi's Old Vine Zin.
So this is, it's actually very interesting that there's a lot of exploration with Iberian varietals here. It's hot, dry in Spain and Portugal. They seem to do really well. One of the fascinating things for me is that even though this is such an important grape growing region, Lodi, with the exception of Old Vine Zins perhaps, hasn't really been pegged with anything. There's no Napa Zin or Russian River Chardonnay, which gives you this freedom to create premium wines from anything that you can create premium wines from, which seems to be just about everything. But you really honed in on the Iberian varietals. This is your doing.
Yes, yes. I honed in on the Iberian varietals, and I would remember coming to a lot of early commission meetings saying we really need to focus on things other than Zin, other than Zin. And I
They didn't
should
throw you out
preface, yeah, they
immediately?
didn't throw me out. I should preface that I'm one of the few that actually came here, and so I am actually. I was joking around the other night that my children are first generation, but I have been kindly and greatly embraced by the entire community, and I speak very highly of it because of everything that I've seen over the years and how I've been treated here. So, but I really thought that Lodi could do a lot more, and certainly in the Mediterranean varieties, I thought that we should experiment. And because of that high diurnal fluctuation we were talking about earlier, one of the things about Tempranillo is that it is actually a high elevation variety from Spain. It grows in the Ribera del Duero, it grows in the Rioja, and all these places are continental climate, high elevation, hot nights, cold days. Well, that's what we have here. So I was pretty confident that we would be able to do a really good Tempranillo, but I also wanted to know that we had to have the good clone material to be able to produce that good Tempranillo. And so between having the right clones selected and the right locations selected, and by that I mean, for example, the J-Hand AVA on the northern part of Lodi has these beautiful, beautiful clay loams that are actually called San Joaquin clay loams. And Tempranillos, much like Merlots, concentrate their flavors in the clay loams. They prefer the clay in the soil than just pure sands. And we found a beautiful match with those soils with Tempranillo. So you get this notes of dark fruit, but a lot of cherry, sour cherry. You get some cocoa. We also use a little bit of American oak. We used to use entirely French oak, and a couple of the Spanish enologists who had tasted our wines would say, "You're not doing it right. You need a little American oak in there." Like, okay. So we started about 4 years ago putting up to about 20% American oak. This particular wine also has 15% Graciano, and we generally use Graciano to between 5 and 15% in a blend, and that, if you've never had it, is a unique variety, which is Basque in origin. It's from Navarre.
And if you've never had it, Bokish actually bottles a varietal Graciano. So if you wanted to try it,
you could
that would be an
try it.
option.
You could try it, although we're very limited in our distribution outside of California, I must say. But
You sell on a website? You sell?
we do. We sell on websites, and we have a good presence in Washington, D.C., and California, and portions of Canada. So yeah, but aside from Tempranillo, also other varieties we've experimented with is the Garnacha Tinta, the Garnacha Blanca, Verdelho, Verdejo, Alvarinho, and the surprise to me actually was how well whites do in Lodi. And in fact, interestingly enough, in our winery, about 55% of our entire case goods, which is around 3,000 cases, is white, and 45% is red. So.
Well, and it's interesting too, because more and more people are picking up on that, and we're seeing a lot more who are bottling Tempranillos and Albariños, and just found out today there's some new wineries that are going to be making their first white wines, and it's going to be an Albariño.
Yeah.
So it's, it's really kind of taken hold here.
Yeah, in fact, at one point the commission coined Lodiberia, which I love.
Lodiberia.
And there's I think a good argument for that.
So let's move on. I just want to make sure that we have enough time for everything. So we're going to the Ironstone Reserve, Zin, and my second intensive visit here in Lodi. The east-west thing is really becoming blatantly clear. There's probably a middle too. Eventually there'll probably be a east, a west, and a center Lodi.
Sure.
And there's a lot of lot of Lodi pride involved there as well. Depending on where you are, the east is better, the west is better. But can you talk a little bit about, and let's talk specifically about Zinfandel, how Zin changes from east to west. This is applicable, of course, for most varieties, but I think it mostly comes up in the discussions of Zinfandel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting because there's some friendly rivalry, as you mentioned, between the east side, west side, but what it really does for me shows that Zinfandel can pick up very different qualities depending upon the soils and a little bit of the climatic differentiations that exist between the east and west side, and really what is expressed in the fruit that ultimately makes the wines. The east side folks will tell you that they are able to get these much more robust flavors and these darker expressions of Zinfandel. The west side might be a little bit lighter expression of Zinfandel. But I think what's interesting
Lighter
is,
being a relative term.
lighter being
It's
a
still
relative
Lodi.
it's still Lodi, but you know, I think that's the beauty, and what I think a lot of people may think of when they think of Lodi Zinfandel, they think of one thing, and they think of the big fruit bombs. But realistically, Zinfandel is one of the most versatile grapes that I can think of as far as in winemaking. I mean, you can make a full range of different styles of Zinfandel, everything from lighter, elegant, pretty Zinfandels all the way through those big, rich, robust, fruity wines that a lot of people really like. And so it's very, very versatile, and that east-west kind of divide, while it's a friendly rivalry, really provides folks who are looking for different kinds of Zinfandels a wide range of platforms to taste.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I wanted to mention is the old vine concept, and that is something that is definitely part of our heritage here. You know, old vine, there's no term that regulates what old vine is, and some folks may say that 25-year-old vines or 30-year-old vines may constitute old, but around here that's so far from the truth. When we say old vine, and in our old vines ends, we really mean old vines. They're 75, 80,
century-year-old,
100-year-old. We were in earlier this week. We were in a Senso vineyard that's 133 years old.
And today at Kirschemann's, we were surrounded by eight within the line of sight, 8 actual old vine, 80, 90, 100-year-old vine vineyards.
And the Kirschemann, yeah, most of that corridor is 100 years old, between 1913 and 1917 planting.
And still producing beautiful, beautiful wines.
Yes.
Yeah, and you look at that east-west divide is it's a generalization,
Right.
Because you really can look at pockets of areas that produce different flavor profiles, and you can do this with other varieties as well. And in fact, one of the benefits of having larger wineries in the area is that you have a consistent winemaking style with a winemaker who can bring in Chardonnays or Sauvignon Blancs from the entire district and start pinpointing in an aroma wheel what areas of Lodi might give more peach, or might give a little more pineapple, or might give a little more grassiness. And it's a very interesting thing, the amount of knowledge that these larger wineries hold and how they might want to look at where they buy their fruit for their wine style.
Or where you might want to plant. So that's a really interesting observation. So how far along is Lodi into understanding what should be planted where, what grows best where? I mean, it's a long process, of course. You got to plant, you got to wait a couple of years.
Yeah.
So is this really just the first couple of pages of Lodi's story of single vineyard and appellation-driven wines within the Lodi?
Well, certainly we're at the very beginning stages of it. And I think it's because it's only been about 30 years that we've had more modern winemaking techniques to really understand the nuanced differences between these different aromas on the same varietal. But I can tell you, with Zinfandel, specific to Zinfandel, a lot of that Zinfandel that comes from that Victor corridor, that Victor district, it really deserves to be its separate own AVA.
So now, is Victor to the southeast of Lodi?
No, so Victor's directly to the east of the town of Lodi. So directly along Highway 12, as you go to the Sierra foothills, it's about 5 miles out of the town of Lodi.
So for me, that's sort of an interesting comment, because it doesn't really fit what I would have expected from East Side Zinfandel then, because it's light and elegant and very perfumed and a brilliant wine.
Yeah.
So it is its own thing. And it's even when we get comfortable with East versus West, we start making exceptions.
Yes.
So it's much more complex.
And then you go a little bit further to the north and the east, because if you can imagine, the traditional Lodi area was for decades really surrounding the town of Lodi. And then in the 90s, we had a virtual, 30–40% increase in the total acreage in our area, and that, for the most part, was east and northeast into the volcanic soils, which are really Sierra-type soils. And the types of vines the growing pattern there, the aromatics that come out, they're totally different. So I can talk very directly about a Zinfandel that we farmed. It's on the Vista Luna vineyard, and a Zinfandel that we farmed that's in the Victor area. And one is a bold and fruity and unctuous wine from the hills, and the other one is a much more nuanced, perfumed wine that is located on these sandy and silty loams that are not very vigorous. I mean, these soils are deep, but they're not very vigorous. They don't have a lot of organic matter. They don't have a lot of nutrient holding capacity. And then 3 feet down, you got this limestone layer that is, I think, part of the secret to the nuance of that one.
That region?
Right.
Yeah.
Just, wasn't on the, we tasted them, Lodi native, just I want to throw that out there. If people are interested in tasting the variety of Zinfandel from Lodi, I thought it was a fascinating, it's 6 wines, 6 different vineyards, 6 different wineries, basically the same protocol, no new oak, no ads, I don't remember, no native yeast.
It's all native yeast.
So for me, it was a real expression of what is Lodi. You take a lot of the winemaking out of the equation, and it was just amazing, the range of styles. There was a virtual tasting last Tuesday when Nanette cheated and tasted all the wines beforehand. Is that correct?
I'm a cheater.
But I think everybody tasted the wines again. I think it was yesterday. Was surprised that the wines showed differently. They're incredibly expressive, and I think that if you get the chance to try them, I think you can. There's a website here you can probably order it from.
You can order it through the LodiNative.com website or contact us at the Wine Grape Commission. We have some.
Some 6-packs. It's fascinating. It's a really educational taste of Lodi Zin.
And it's great because it really is not so much about the winery, it's about the vineyards. And that's what's so special about that project is it was born and bred by a group of winemakers, but it was absolutely to express Lodi's unique terroir and really express the differences that Old Vine Zinfandel can have from different vineyards throughout the region. And that's, a true testament to that innovation and thinking outside of the box that takes place in this region.
And the differences are profound.
Absolutely.
And even though they're the vineyards that were used for those original 6 are relatively closely spaced, if my memory serves correctly.
Somewhat. They were, and they all fall within one of our sub-appellations. So Lodi itself has the overall Lodi AVA, but then we are not a homogeneous region by any stretch of the imagination. And Marcus's point that even Victor may require its own sub-appellation. We have 7 sub-appellations within the Lodi AVA that all have very distinct and unique differences within them. And that really speaks to the differences in the grapes that you're getting and the wines that can be made from those. And you're starting to see more and more of the sub-appellations appear on labels as well, everything from the Alta Mesa and the McCullough River. So you're seeing very, very different wines being highlighted and expressed from those sub-appellations within our one Lodi AVA.
It's getting even more exciting. So we have just a couple of minutes. 2 additional questions. What are other white varietals common to Lodi?
Well, like I said, we are the leading producer of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. Albarino is really exploding.
Is that going to be the next?
Albarino.
You're biased. Well, let me ask Cameron.
Well, we're seeing more and more wineries that are doing Albarinos. We're seeing a lot of folks also play with Rhone varietals. We're finding that Rhones do quite well here also. Beautifully expressive wines like those from Acquiesce that we tried yesterday. So, I think where we see ourselves going, or where I see us going, is that whites are going to be something that will be a segment that continues to grow in this region, and as more and more people express and play around with what they like is their white style.
So somebody asked, does Harney Lane do a Vermentino or a Verdelho?
No, on neither one of them. We do have some Vermentino that's coming out of the Lodi region. Uvaggio is a winery that does a Vermentino.
Delicious
and
too.
Hybrid by Peltier Station also has a Vermentino. Beautiful, light, crisp wines. Verdelho, there's yourself that's doing one, and St. George.
And Ron Silva.
And Ron Silva with Alta Mesa
Verdelho
wine.
distinct from Verdejo, as we discussed yesterday.
Yes.
Very, very different wines.
What's interesting is that the white wines are doing very well here to complement the red wines that are also doing very well. But for the most part, it's easier to play around with more reds. Maybe because red wine drinkers are more apt to experiment with different red varieties that they haven't known. And I think one of the great things happening in California right now is this concept of the blend, so that winemakers can play around with these different varietals and make, as an example, the second wine.
Yeah.
Intuition is fantastic. 3 varieties that might not be recognized at all in the marketplace, but put together like this is fantastic. So.
It's a difficult sell, though. to go out with a white blend with 3 varietals. 2 people, the Gewürz you've got an opinion of, the Kerner you don't know, and Riesling you have an opinion of. So it's bold.
It is.
bold.
It's absolutely bold, but I think it also, while it may be a challenging sell in some places, it is a wine that when people try it really kind of blows their mind.
It's also
That's how
bold.
much of it.
Off the tech sheet, it's 1 ton an acre.
Right.
So this is, I mean, that's an insanely low yield, and for $20 to get that sort of cropping levels, you know, it's not the most financially advised decision. His financial advisor must be beating himself over the head. What are you doing?
Sure. It's a labor of love.
It's
and
a labor
an
of
expression
love.
of history and heritage and bold thinking.
So we are almost out of time. I'm just curious, do any of our writers have anything they want to share? Any questions? Anything you want to mention about this fabulous time in Lodi? Nobody?
Yeah, I'll dive in.
Jump in there, Bill.
Well, I just had some guy make a comment to me on Twitter, and he said, I've said it once, I'll say it again. He's kind of being pompous about it. Lodi Reds have this particular character to its fruit that I can only describe as sticky heat, put in quotes.
Sticky heat?
It's just sticky.
Sticky.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can appreciate his point of view, and I think a lot of people are probably in that mindset because they've not explored enough. They've not, come here and tried, the different things that are available to them. Their only perception is maybe the small segment of the market that they get commodity stuff, and so they're not really experiencing some of the other wines, and especially with the Lodi Native Project and a lot of the other ones I've tried since I've been here. I'm like, wow, there's way more than that. I mean, it really changed my mind and changed my perception because and I didn't always have the highest regard. To be perfectly honest, I didn't. My last visit here was back in 2008, and I didn't really think, wow, this was an exciting region that I want to recommend other people explore. But now having coming back, and I've been convinced, and my mind has been changed.
Just got to try the wines.
Yeah, you
right?
gotta try them. You gotta keep exploring. You just gotta keep looking to see what's going on, and it's fun to see the change that's going on here. It's fun to see the new directions, and it's fun to see how well the folks that live here in Lodi work together to try to make that that perception go away.
I guess I was also blown away that there isn't one taste. What makes it so distinctive is there's so much variety. I mean, there's so many different flavors that you can experience here, and it's such a great destination. I'm definitely coming back. I mean, we saw so many beautiful things to visit, and I like that in the wineries, anyone that comes to visit is going to meet someone who is touching the grapes, who has something to do with making the wine. It's not just going to be somebody who is just there to pour the wine. That person's going to know the story. And so when you visit the wineries here, I think the visitors get that experience. You want to touch the ground, and you want to see the vines, and you can here because it's the perfect size that everything is still really approachable. I think that it would be a great vacation to come and really check it out rather than just seeing what you're supposed to see. You get to see it all.
Yeah.
See it behind the scenes.
Yeah, and anybody can
Behind
have
the
a
curtain.
behind-the-scenes experience.
Everybody can have it,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I'll say one thing that has really impressed me, and this is particularly from spending so much time with the growers this week, is that Lodi historically has exported all of its grapes to other vintners to make wine, right? And they have a very profitable business model right now selling these grapes to other people. They're actually ripping out, certain varieties and everything else that are making money right now in hopes that they can make great wine 10, 20 years in the future. They don't even know if they're ever going to see a profit on that, but they care so much about the product and about the integrity of the quality of what they're able to produce that they're doing that. And that's not really something you see in very many industries around the world right now. So really, it's been a huge eye-opener. And if you have any previous conceptions about Lodi wine or anything else, come out
Forget
here
'em.
and check it out. You'll be blown away.
You gotta come here with a clean slate.
Yeah.
You gotta come here with an open mind and a clean slate, and you'll be surprised. Anybody else? We'll pan back to our
They all say ditto.
ditto.
Ditto, it's fantastic.
What they said.
here. Yeah.
So I have to say, it's probably one of the most unfortunate things about Lodi is limited distribution of some of these wines. Because a lot of people who are tasting wines that gain a certain impression of Lodi are probably tasting a very, very limited segment of what Lodi has to offer.
But if you live in California, you have a good chance of
Yeah.
being exposed to it, right?
Sure. Exactly.
I mean, in California is, and probably, the East Coast, are probably the biggest buyers, of red wines and other styles of wines that are available. I mean, most of my readers come all from the West Coast and all from like Virginia and Washington DC. I mean, I just look at the map of anyone that like clicks on my blog is those areas.
Yeah.
And I often hope, is that the president reading my blog?
Of course it is.
He's a
It's
wine
me.
guy. He's a wine guy,
So, Cameron, just if people are interested in getting these wines,
Sure.
how would they go about doing that?
Well, we do have, like Marcus was saying, some of our wineries are in distribution more so than others. Any of our wineries are actually folks are able to get to them online by visiting lodiwine.com, and then we have links to all of our wineries. We always recommend folks to come out and visit us. We welcome you to our region. Many of our wineries are actually direct to consumer, either over the tasting room counter or online. And so I would say, take a look at what your favorite wine writers are writing about, because there's a lot of buzz happening about Lodi, and contact the wineries or look them up in your local retailer and ask for more Lodi wines to be held in your local retailer.
I would say, yeah, ask them. And it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting time for wine buyers and wine retailers, because wine buyers have never had access to so much information, and wine buyers are now starting to change the selection of wine at retail across the country. So go to your retailer, say you want to try an East Side and a West Side Lodi Zin, you want to try a Lodi Albarino, you want to try Intuition, and make them get the wines for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody here would be very happy if that happened.
We would be elated.
Yes.
And like I said, I do want to extend the invitation again to anybody, please, anytime, come and visit us. Our doors are always open, and we look forward to having you.
And I'll repeat it, this is a fantastic destination for a wine geek, because you get access. It's an exciting time. There's so many things going on. You taste things that you won't taste in other regions. Other regions tend to focus on one or two things, and then there's something unusual here or there. Here, everybody focuses on one or two things, and then they've got a whole portfolio of exciting things to try. And for a jaded palate, especially if you think that Lodi just produces sticky reds, a jaded palate should come here. And if you come here with an open mind, you will be blown away. The weather is fabulous. It's easy to drive around here. There's just lots of straight roads, so getting from place to place they're very closely spaced, and it's easy to get from winery A to winery B. Great restaurants, we're at Wine and Roses, a beautiful resort to stay at. It sounds like shilling a little bit, because many of us have said it, but I look forward to coming back here. And I travel a lot. It's a great adventure for the wine lover.
You're here.
Absolutely.
So on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. We've run over a little bit. Marcus, I want to thank you. Cameron, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's been our communal pleasure to be here with you for the past 3 days, and I think that there's a lot of excitement about Lodi wine. You got to come here. You come here, and it changes your perception in such a dramatic and fundamental way that it is shocking. I don't think that's going to be written over and over again.
Great. Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.